Parenting is an adventure, and like any other adventure, you've got to work hard and be prepared.
The quest is on.
We're in search for all things parenting. We hear from the kids, from the professionals, and from you, real parents on real issues. It's all happening right here, right now, on Care.
Care, the adventures of parenting.
Hi, welcome to Care. Today it is all about risk avoidance. And if you're not sure what risk avoidance is, well, Rebecca is going to fill you in a little bit more. But basically, it's risk avoidance versus sexual education. Of course, right now, there's a big call. Everybody's talking about getting sex ed into schools. And Rebecca's here to explain to us the difference between risk avoidance versus just plain sex ed, and why we should be going more towards putting risk avoidance in schools.
Right. So the sex ed that most people would probably hear about is what we call comprehensive sex ed or risk reduction. So the goal of those curriculums is to equip teens to reduce the risk. In other words, use contraceptives or, that, and then it focuses mainly on sexual activity. Whereas a risk avoidance curriculum encourages teens to make healthy choices to avoid those risky behaviors in the first instance, which really results in a delay in their first sexual debut. And the research shows that the longer teens can delay, even just by 5 years, Marsha, drastically cuts the percentage of unplanned pregnancies and STIs, just by a few years, right? Then the other thing with risk avoidance is that it clusters behavior. So it doesn't just look at sexual behavior, it looks at alcohol, tobacco, drugs, media, refusal skills, because of course we're teaching them to say no, right?
Yes.
So it's different refusal skills, and we look at media and society, because media is a powerful
Media is a big
shaper
part
of values. And
yes, I like that word. Media shapes our values. It is our new shaper of values.
yes.
I actually
When you
posted
thought
that
it
on
should be
Facebook,
parents, right?
last week, I think somebody was saying we're all guided.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just like, who's guiding
Yeah,
you?
or
you know?
what?
Yeah, what's your moral compass?
Exactly.
And a lot of people, you're right.
Yeah.
Media is becoming.
So
the
we
moral
do cover
compass.
that. So it covers that as well.
All right.
And the reason for that is to take a broad approach, so that when a teen goes through a risk avoidance curriculum as opposed to a comprehensive sex ed curriculum, they are armed with the tools to make healthy choices. Even if you think about this from a public health standpoint, not even a religious standpoint, right? Because our curriculum is actually not religious per se.
Okay.
It would align with someone's religious worldview because it's risk avoidance, but it's not a Bible-based curriculum, right?
Right.
But even if you think about this from a public health standpoint, if you want to avoid an epidemic occurring, what do? Prevent, right? So the saying an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure applies to teen behavior.
Right.
And helping them to avoid risky behaviors, which we could
But then
go into.
It's not, but from a public health perspective, they are trying to prevent. That's why we say use a condom. I know I've seen you throw stats about in terms of this condom distribution. Just
Okay, so 70% of college-age students don't use it.
wow.
50% of girls don't use it, which means that the girls are actually less consistent than the boys, because at least with the boys, so college age, 70% don't use it, okay? And I recall there was a survey done at our local university that bears that out.
Right.
It was trending the same way. In the high school context, 50% of the girls don't use it. And about 30% of the boys don't use it. So you have a higher usage.
So they're using it a little bit more in high school.
Correct.
Why are they using it in high school? I don't know. In the first place, 'cause they shouldn't
That's the
need it
point.
in fun.
That's the point, right? That's the point, because we want to get our teens safely through high school without initiating these behaviors and these activities. Because if we can get them through high school successfully, even up to 18, and in the case of women, up to 21, Marsha, the stats in terms of reduction of STIs and unplanned pregnancy is staggering.
Tell us the stats.
Okay, so for instance,
Convince us.
well, let me tell
You're
you.
a lawyer by
Oh my gosh,
I'm not a lawyer anymore. You're not practicing. She's
Yeah.
helping a lot. She's doing a lot of social work, helping
Exactly,
our country.
exactly.
Thank you for that.
Exactly. So let me give you some of the outcomes, right? So they did a survey. This is one survey in particular where they looked at teens that were sexually active and teens that weren't, meaning they had abstained until 18, right? 60% of them were less likely to be kicked out of high school. 50% of them were less likely to drop out altogether. And almost twice as many students graduated from college. So in other words, they would have they would have pulled from the data of students who did or did not complete and then went on to ask them about their sexual health and behavior. And this is what they found. So in other words, teens that abstain from sexual activity increase their chances of just even completing high school.
So there is a link between academics and sexual behavior.
Oh yeah, even mental health, physical outcomes. So for instance, I mean, so imagine a teen getting pregnant, okay? She now has to care for a child and for herself. That significantly impacts on her ability to be involved in school and her ability to go through her teenage life happily, because she now has major responsibilities, right? For those of us who have children, we know how demanding and loving they could be, right? So they require a lot. And even if that teen goes back to high school or finishes high school at some later point, it still means that she has deferred or delayed her career or her academic accomplishments. And even at the center where we're a pregnancy and family center, so we have teens and women who would come through the center, and when we check their background, most of them have not finished high school. So, I mean, I have not, done a scientific survey at the center, but from my experience, the majority of the clients who come to us at risk and vulnerable and pregnant or with some other issue didn't finish high school. So we don't want this for our teens, right? We want them to complete their education. And there was another survey they did where 87% of the students said, send me a strong message of abstinence. They
wanted a
correct,
message.
yes. They said, send me a strong message that avoiding these behaviors is better for me. They preferred that. 93% of parents in the same survey said, yes, this is what we want for our children. So when you look at it both from a teen perspective and from the parent's perspective, they want their child to have a healthy life, and they do recognize that the early initiation of certain behaviors will hamper that.
I'm going to go on a break. When we come back, I
Sure.
want you to explain to me in detail, how do we tell children to abstain?
Right.
How do we go about actually carrying out this risk avoidance? Don't go anywhere, guys. You're watching Care. Hi, welcome back to Care. Today it is all about risk avoidance, which is an alternative to sex education. It is based on the premise of avoidance totally versus
Risk reduction.
Risk reduction, yes. I remember once we were talking and you had said risk reduction is kind of like saying, well, you know what? You're going to do drugs anyway. So here, do it safely.
Right,
That
exactly.
was the,
Yeah.
and I remember that really being that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You know, if we thought about the dangers of sex
Yeah.
and we put it on par with drugs. you
Yeah.
know, and maybe that's what we're not doing. So maybe we want to go into some of the things that you do cover in the risk avoidance.
Okay.
But maybe you can speak to the parents or speak to even teens that are watching. What are some of the consequences of sex? Because as you say, it's not a biblical thing. So it's not sex before marriage, but it's the whole idea of delaying sex.
Correct.
At least till 18 to 21, definitely till you finish school at least.
And hopefully till you get married.
Hopefully.
Ideally.
Yes.
But okay, so the curriculum that we use in particular uses what we call a youth developmental approach, okay? So it recognizes that our Trinidad and Tobago teens are smart. They are wanting to have a good future. And so we try to help them to focus on that. Okay, so this is what I want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. How do I get from where I am to where I want to be? That speaks to young people. They kind of, perk up when they hear that. And then there are some very specific character traits that researchers have found in children that are more resilient and better able to make healthy choices as opposed to those who aren't. So when the curriculum was designed, not by us, but by Program Reach in the USA, when they designed their curriculum, they built every module and every exercise and every skit and every video with certain underlying objectives, right? And those underlying objectives was to build back or build these character traits in the teens. Because the assumption that they made was that there wouldn't be very many to work with in the first place.
Okay.
Because the curriculum itself was designed to cater to at-risk communities and at-risk teens, right? Or teens that were more vulnerable to unhealthy choices.
What are some of those characteristics?
Well, resiliency is one, self-esteem, self-efficacy or confidence, right? The ability to understand that this is my body and I have the right to say no. The refusal skills, meaning the ability to craft refusal skills in this situation when it's happening, to take what they've learned, and modify it for that situation. Anger management.
That's for me my favorite part of it.
Yeah.
Because I always remember, even when Jessie was 5, she would have all these long lists of things that she's not allowed to do, right? And she came to me one day and said, Mom, it's very embarrassing for me to tell my friends that I'm not allowed.
Right.
And so I remember saying, okay, well, let's see what else we can say. Instead of you saying you're not allowed, because you're not allowed was an embarrassment to her.
Right.
But she knew she had to say no.
Yes,
But she
because
needed
of the
to
values.
figure out
Yes.
how to say no without going, well, I'm a baby and I'm not allowed.
Right, right.
And we had to work that out. And
Exactly.
so now it's, she may walk away and just say, I'm not in the mood for television.
Right.
And she chooses to do something else.
Right.
Or she may say, that's not a show that I like to watch.
Correct.
I've chosen not to watch it.
Right.
So it doesn't fall on, well, I have no choice and it's my mother who's told me no.
Right.
And I think that was the first time I had realized that, our rules are our rules, but it's embarrassing to go out there and say no. So when you had brought that up, that refusal skills, that's something that's really,
extremely
really
important.
big.
Because you can't
should definitely concentrate on that.
You cannot say to your teens, especially when, we've talked about the teen brain already, but now is probably a good time to repeat that.
Right.
So the teen brain, according to research coming out of the 90s, 1990 forward, is saying that the teen brain is not fully developed until 25, right? So it means that up until then you have impulsive behavior, you have inability to regulate emotions, and just that front part of the brain that connects, okay, if I do this, it will lead to this consequence, therefore I should avoid this, right? It's not fully there until 25. And what the neuroscientists have said is you need to be your children's prefrontal cortex during this period of time, okay? But having said that, this is why teaching them refusal skills becomes more crucial, because you can't just tell a teen, listen, don't do marijuana, don't smoke tobacco, don't try beer, or don't drink alcohol, don't get involved with your girlfriend at 14, 15, 16, or until you're married or whatever. You need to equip them with, as you said, those types of refusal skills. So we have about between 4 to 6 different categories or types of refusal skills that we teach. But apart from that, I remembered there was one parent, he told his teens, listen, if you're in a jam, just text the letter X to me and I'll come and get you.
Right.
And I'll just show up and you just exit.
Right.
You wouldn't do that for a 5-year-old, but a teen who might go out to Lime, You could do right. So there's
So
no
exit strategy.
right,
Right,
right.
yeah.
There's no explaining to the friends. There is no oh my god.
But even
what do
when,
I
you know,
tell?
in Hollywood, we see that dating strategy, right? Where
You
the phone
sneak-
calls
right.
and you get the call that says, it's
Right.
an emergency with your kids, you have to leave. And
Right.
they have to leave. And when it's a
Exactly.
bad date or
Right.
whatever. So all these things are
Right.
practical
yeah.
solutions.
You have to, when it comes to teens, you have to get down to the practical.
Yeah.
You have
I
to
think
put-
that's what we're missing.
Yeah.
We stand up on our moral high ground and
Yeah,
we go,
yeah.
don't do this, don't do that. But they live in a practical world where
Oh, yeah,
peer
yeah,
pressure
yeah.
is real.
Oh, yeah.
And we have to give them practical solutions.
Yeah.
Speaking about practical solutions, we have a practical tip for you. It's called Finance and the Family, because no matter all the different tips I give you, if we're struggling to put food on the table, it ain't gonna work. So Finance and the Family is up next.
As a family, aim to have a diversified source of income. Starting and growing a home business is easier than ever these days. You can teach yourself how to market your business on social media, and there are countless self-help books for home businesses. If done right, this can become a great family project. How wonderful to be able to earn an extra income while doing a project together. Who knows, one day if the need arises, this business can become a major source of income for you and your family and grow into something to leave behind for generations to come.
Hi, welcome back to Care. If you're just joining us today, it is all about risk avoidance. If you're not sure what risk avoidance is, it is a healthy alternative to sex education. Basically, sex education says, here's what, let's help you to do it in a reduced way, where your risk is reduced. In this way, we're helping you to avoid the risk altogether. Yes?
Yeah.
And based on research, children, teens are saying that they want to be told
Correct.
to avoid it. They want a healthy future, they want a bright future, and they want to know what are the tools, what are the characteristics, what are the things that's going to help me get that bright future. So if you give them the answers, they'll take it. Yes?
So you are asking, you know, what we cover in the curriculum itself. So we look at communication skills, because again, with teens, we can't assume that they know how to communicate, right? So we cover that. We look at human growth and development. We look at sexually transmitted infections. We look at sexual health and behavior. Just simple things like, okay, what is a healthy versus an unhealthy relationship? And there are markers of abuse that we show them, and even, you know, maybe a lower end abuse as opposed to higher end abuse. And I've had children say to me, oh my gosh, I know somebody who goes through this. And I didn't think this
Didn't
was
realize it was abuse.
is abusive, right? So
It's just an eye opener you
Yeah,
find
yeah,
for
yeah.
some of the teenagers when they see it.
Even when we inform teens of statistically the potential to increase violence in that relationship if you date someone more than three years older than you. The statistic shows that if you date someone more than 3 years older than you as a teen, you're exposing yourself to a greater chance of violence occurring. And, you know, we talk about things
I don't
like...
think adults know that.
Well, you know, when you cross 25, you know, the age gap shouldn't, especially over 30, definitely over 30.
It doesn't, yes.
The age gap wouldn't affect you that much because you can negotiate. You could still negotiate, and your cognitive development is fully intact, all things being equal. Right?
Yes.
But for a teen, if you're 13 and you're dating someone who's 17 or 18,
That's a big gap.
yeah, and you're cognitively, that's huge. And then how do you negotiate the rules of that relationship? Especially if the two people have different values. So these are all the things that we cover in sexual health and behavior. And then we also look at media and society, and we look at alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, because behaviors cluster. And what you find is young people who begin down the path of exploring with alcohol, tobacco, other drugs will switch over into engaging, there's a higher probability that they will get involved in sexual activity.
Okay.
And vice versa. And one of the reasons for that is that alcohol and marijuana are gateway drugs, for instance. They affect your inhibition or your ability to control,
Okay.
right? So, for instance, we have a pair of drunken glasses that we use. We call it drunken glasses. But it's a pair of glasses that was manufactured to mimic what happens to the brain when you consume alcohol. So the kids put it on and they try to walk a line. They're never able to walk the line. So, we explain to them, imagine this is just a pair of glasses and you can't even walk a line. Imagine what happens if you actually consume amounts of alcohol frequently and someone approaches you or someone tries to coerce you, what would happen? And so that has been, this is why the risk avoidance doesn't just look at sexual activity, it looks at all the clustering behaviors, right? Why am I so convinced that this is necessary? Is because STIs are increasing. We are having an issue with unplanned pregnancies, even though there is a decline.
Oh, really? There's a decline in Trinidad?
Well, yeah. There is a smaller decline in Trinidad, though.
Oh.
But
Because isn't it it's like thousands per year still. Well,
yeah, we need to tackle that.
Okay.
But because and would you believe that ironically that a comprehensive sex ed curriculum, so I wouldn't just say sex ed, right? I'd say comprehensive sex ed or risk reduction affects females more than males negatively.
Okay, explain.
So because of the female's biological makeup, for instance, she is more likely to contract an STI than a male.
Okay.
So the CDC statistics, one of their statistics is that 14 to 19-year-old females, that population of females, 1 in 4 females had at least one STI in that age bracket, 14 to 19.
Okay.
Because biologically their body, in particular their cervix, is not yet fully developed. That doesn't happen until you're 21. Prior to that, it's very porous. So bacteria and virus can more easily be contracted, right? And these are things that our girls need to know.
I definitely think these are things they need to know. I really do think that. I feel like I don't know some of these things.
So you need to come to Health Respect.
Well, I always say, but I always try to get you to let me in, right? But I'm not a teen. But maybe, I don't know if you guys do these things for parents, because I would like to be equipped to teach my child, that's for sure.
What we've started doing, so for instance, the last Healthy Respect, built into our Healthy Respect curriculum is 3 parent sessions. So
But my child is not a teen yet, so I want to
No, but we have curriculums from 10.
Okay, so I have to wait a little bit. You're real young.
We could do a parent session, and
Yes.
you can come to that.
Okay, so we're gonna do a parent session. Before we're gonna do this parent session, I have to go to Care Tech Tip. That's the tip where we're gonna help you guys use technology a little bit more responsibly. Don't go anywhere. Care Tech Tip is next. Stop, tell, and block. This is what your kids should do when someone they do not know makes contact with them online. We all had pen pals, and they were a great way to learn about new cultures and the way in which others lived. So it's not a bad thing if our children befriend strangers from a foreign land. But this must be done with the supervision of parents. Both parties should have a session where the parents can meet online and determine if this is a suitable online friendship. Just like in real life, parents ought to meet and vet all new acquaintances. But unlike face-to-face meetings, much of their identity can be hidden. If after due diligence you are not certain about the authenticity of this profile, then block and move on. Hi, welcome back to Care. Today is all about risk avoidance. Before we get back into our topic, we have our confessions feature. It's been one of the more popular features in season 2. We have been getting quite a bit of good feedback. It's a bit of a heavy topic because it does help us it does force us to face the realities of what is going on in Trinidad and Tobago. But hopefully it also helps to raise our levels of compassion because we get to hear from the other side. Confessions is next.
It wasn't really much different to now. We had the bullying maybe taking a different face, but there was still quite a lot of bullying of the younger kids by the older kids. And I remember one particular incident when I got into school in Form 1. It was actually a guy from my same year. He started bullying me for whatever reason. I'd never had interactions with him before, but he would, call me names like, Bullerman or faggot or things like that. And obviously, as a male, you want to respond. And after a while, it became unbearable, and I started responding, and I would say things like, well, it takes a faggot to know a faggot. And apparently, he couldn't take what he was giving out, and he assaulted me. He choked me around my neck, and, basically my feet weren't touching the floor. He had jacked me up against a wall, and I remember being in that position thinking, I'm gonna get this guy back. I'm gonna wait for the opportune moment when I can do some damage to him. And we exchanged words even after that for a while. And when break time came, I said to myself, okay, there he is in the cage, in that area. I'll go get him. And I remember we were basically having a standoff, and no one wanted to hit the other, but the guys surrounding us, they were jeering us on. And someone who was standing behind me threw a piece of bread at him, and he then proceeded to throw punches at me. And that's when I lost it, and I started punching him. I didn't even know, or I wasn't aware of when my fist had landed in his face, and he got a black eye as a result of that. And I think from there on out, I had vowed, never to fight in school, in secondary school again. But these are the type of things that happen when you get into these so-called prestige schools. And even worse than this, there are, lunchtime play fights, so-called play fights. There are birthday sweat, they call it, where basically the guy, whoever's birthday it is, they get beat up. There was bang. Basically, you take a ball and you volley it into a person as hard as you can. And for the smaller kids, that would have been a little bit unbearable because it would have been bigger guys doing this to them. And you would see so many different things that you would not expect to see in a prestige school. From, I remember illegal substances being sold as well. I would have bought at some point in time. But all of this and everything that I would have done, I would have been involved myself in bullying other kids at some point due to the fact that I was bullied. And so I needed an outlet, and I turned on other students as well. I remember all of these things happening while I was in secondary school. You know, from kids being stabbed and being taken to the hospital, to, you know, as I said before, the birthday sweats. And I remember even kids being dumped into garbage bins because they were so big, and the younger students were so small that they could literally fit into a garbage bin, and that was fun for the older guys. I couldn't imagine why it was fun, or, I mean, looking back at it now, I can't. But it was fun. They saw these things as fun. I think it's a misconception to say or to deem this type of behavior as boys will be boys, because it, in my opinion, definitely contributes to the ills of society that we have happening today. There's a psychological effect, and I can't remember the terminology for it, but it does affect the psyche of a person to be beaten on or to do the beating. And so a lot of criminal activity stems from even that age group. With that type of behavior. So I think what we need to really understand and get a firm grasp on is that this is not, it's not proper behavior. It is not fun. It is not boys will be boys. Just as a female can be affected psychologically by abuse, men are affected just as much. And having these things in school, it just basically is a catalyst for you know, a misbehaved person, child or adult as well.
Hi, welcome back to Care. Today it is all about risk avoidance. We're about to get some free information. Well, it's always free information, but you know, it's like a freebie session. We're always trying to get freebies on Care.
Typical parent.
Typical parent, yes. Well, listen, we had finance and the family before, right?
Right.
I need to know. I need to know how to like get as much as I can,
That's
value
right.
for money.
That's right. That's what we
And
do.
yeah, that's what we do.
We should be budgeting the economy.
We probably should. What we should do is hand over to our parents.
Exactly.
You know,
a
like
mom.
find
A
single
mom.
mother.
A mom.
You know, because boy, we can make $1 stretch.
Exactly.
We were talking a lot about, you know, some of this information, and I do think that if children are equipped with this real information, you know, I keep saying we just can't say, well, you know, avoid, don't, this, that. I do like that particular one in terms of how to say no, giving them the refusal skills. Give us, what are some of the, you know, like maybe 5 tips for parents? What are some of the things that we could put in our little, you know, ammunition
Back pocket.
you know, to help, you know, when we're drawing for some things that we can say to our children? What are some of the real things that kind of like, oh my gosh, I did not know this?
Well, you know, before I give the parents the 5 things, not to scare them any further, but the rate of STIs is not just applicable to other countries, it's happening here.
Okay.
And in particular, among our 15 to 24 age group, the cases of new STIs are increasing, right? Why?
How serious are STIs? Because some may say, okay, well, I get it, I take some cream and
right,
I'm gone.
but this is it. With some of them, you can use antibiotics. Some of them are becoming antibiotic resistant, like there's some strains of gonorrhea that are becoming antibiotic resistant. But there may be some damage that occurs that you can't reverse. So like infertility, for instance, you can't reverse it. Or who wants to be on meds for the rest of their life? Right. You know, I saw a little flyer once that said, you know, love might last a night, but herpes is forever.
Oh my goodness.
Because I mean,
Can I put that poster in my child's room?
once you tell her what herpes is.
But I mean, not now. I don't mean now, you know.
No, but trust me, that's a good reminder, right? Because you know, and then you know, the reason why teens are contracting STIs or the rates that they are contracting it is because they. Let me give you an example. If a boy at 14 begins to engage in sexual activity at 14, by the time he's 20, he would have had 6 to 7 partners.
Right.
And that is, if you look at even the data from the CDC, the frequency and the number of persons you are sexually active with increases your probability of getting an STI.
Okay.
The other thing with teens they find is that there's a very frequent pairing up of sexual activity and the use of alcohol and other drugs. So again, remember I said inhibition is low, so even the use of contraceptives and any kind of protective mechanism, even the ability to negotiate boundaries goes out the window. And then even if a parent say, well, you know, maybe I'll just hand them a condom and they'll be fine. But even when condoms are used 100% of the time, 100% accurately every single time, there's a failure rate.
Okay.
And that failure rate is 10% on average. The lowest might be 5%. But you're still playing Russian roulette.
Playing around.
And then there are some STIs that condoms do not protect against at all, like HPV.
Okay.
That doesn't help you at all, right? So it's important for parents to understand that this is becoming a more and more complex.
And these are conversations parents need to have.
Yeah, they
So we need to be prepared to start to have
They
them.
need to have it, but they need to have it in a calm manner, not off the fly when you see them walking out the door. You know, so like they're going to graduation and you're like,
preventative manner.
you know, make sure you do. No,
When should we start having? Well, I mean, I always say we should start sex education from like age 2, where we at least start to say breast, and not like make this thing a taboo topic.
Right.
But in terms of your kind of details, when should parents start to talk about these things?
Right. So we have
When do I mention
curriculums.
STI to my child.
No, well, we have, okay, so first of all, the curriculum that we use is age appropriate and developmentally appropriate. So even though we cover the same 6 or 7 areas, what you would see in the 10 to 11 booklet would be different to what you'd see in the 16 to 18 booklet, right? So we have 2 books for high school, and we have one for the standard 5 into Form 1 kind of age group. So so we have one from standard 5 to Form 1, then we have 2 to 3 or 4, and then we have 5 and above, okay? So we try to ensure, depending on the children that we have coming together, that we use the most age-appropriate and developmentally appropriate material.
Okay.
As to when a parent should start, I would say, I mean, if you want an age, I would say 9. You know, you need to start talking about puberty at the very least.
Right.
Because one of the things they find is that girls are hitting puberty younger and younger.
Yes.
So like 9, 10, at least start to talk about puberty, talk about human growth and development, my reproductive system, what it's there for, you know, what does it look like, what part does what, you know, that kind of basic stuff. And then you don't have to actually scare them at STIs at age 10, 9 or 10 unless you think there's some kind of real risk.
Right.
Or something, right? But as to what parents need to do, you need to improve your communication skills with your teens.
Yeah.
Let's not
Stop
take
running from the topic.
Well, running is one thing, but flying off the handle is the other thing. Parents get a little bit anxiety sometimes, and it may be because of choices we've made in the past, or mistakes that we've made, or things that have happened to us, or experiences that becomes like a trigger issue. If it is, then we need to deal with that as parents. Okay, we need to self-reflect, get a journal, go see somebody if necessary. I mean, I'm serious about this. Go see, you know, go see a professional.
People, you know, all the professionals say that. We tend to either run from or react badly to the things that we have that have hurt us.
Correct. So you know, try to address some of this in advance, so that by the time you get to that period in your child's life where you need to have these conversations, it's not going to be a trigger issue. Because we're not doing them a favor by hoping, by hope and a prayer. I mean, prayer is fantastic and we should do that without ceasing, but you don't want to just rely on a hope and a prayer that they're not going to end up in the same situation, or that they're not going to become sexually active too early, or that they're not going to contract an STI, or that, I've heard sad stories of teens just going out once with an older guy and when one time and they have an STI.
Yeah.
It's not right for our children to endure that when we have the answers. And when it's pregnancy is entirely avoidable.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
Unless there's an assault, in which
Right.
case is 1%. And even then, we have to deal with that when and if it happens. But that's an avoidable event, life event. STI is avoidable, right? So we should, as parents, understand that, deal with our issues, learn to communicate with our teens, understand where our teens' brains are at. Remember, they're not fully cognitively developed. So understand that in communicating this, you need to include practical strategies. I'm here for you. I'm your accountability partner. If I need to be the fall guy, let me be the fall guy. If you have to tell your friend, like, this sounds good, but my mother will hang me from this, whatever. If you have to use your parent as that backup, they need to know that. And they will not know that if you don't say that.
Yeah.
Right?
Awesome. Guys, we have to go on a break. Our last segment is up already. Don't go anywhere. We have our closing comments when we get back. Hi, welcome back to Care. Before we get into our topic, we have Tell Me Your Business. If you're now starting to follow Care, shame on you. But Tell Me Your Business is basically not to make you feel like, I'm failing at life, but hopefully to inspire you that working from home, working for yourself is an option, and it's a great option if you're trying to earn an income around your family life so that family life no longer has to suffer for the sake of paying the bills. Tell Me Your Business is up next.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sai Padmore. I'm the owner of a business called the Brazil Link, and we focus on sport and education international exchanges. Now, I chose this business myself partly because it encompasses my three favorite things, which are traveling, sport, and education. In terms of traveling, I've been exposed to traveling from a very young age. Got parents who traveled all over the world, and we were fortunate as kids growing up to take advantage of and accompany them on trips. Trips as family, trips with friends as well. I'm a lover of sports. I used to play football and cricket. I no longer do, but I'm an avid fan of cricket in particular, and I do love watching football. And in terms of education, I found a passion, something that I enjoy doing, which is teaching foreign languages, or teaching modern languages, let's say. So I teach English as a second language, as well as French and Portuguese. So what I was able to do was find a way to encompass all those three things that I love doing to create a business for myself, a business that I think that, I was able to involve my wife in the business as well, and a number of my friends. So this has certainly helped me in our family life. We have a 16-month-old daughter, and the business which I operate from out of a home office allows me to have that level of flexibility to say, hey, I'm gonna stop what I'm doing now. I'm gonna go pick her up from daycare. Or initially, actually, we used to have a babysitter come to us. So every so often I would go in and check in on her, see what her routine was like. And it allowed me to break up some of the days that I would have had. Sometimes working on your own could be challenging, could be boring. So those little breaks that I had were certainly enjoyable. We have a lot of things going on. And the beauty about all of this is that we are not necessarily a traditional 9-to-5 company or 9-to-5 couple. Having a home office is great, but it's also, you have to be careful, because sometimes I find myself here at 10 o'clock at night doing work when I'm sure most people aren't in their office at 10 o'clock at night doing work. So there is that work-life balance that you need to try to do. And one of the things that we have done is, we've had to set some strict rules. So for example, come 8 p.m., the laptop has to be closed, the office door closed as well, and it's us time, family time. Yeah, financial challenges, that's a real life for parents. Let's say we're relatively lucky because my wife does have a full-time role, but she has been able to add to her or supplement to her salary with her passion as well. I can understand financially for a lot of people, if both partners are full-time small business owners, entrepreneurs, that could be very challenging. Perseverance really is key. And I think a lot of people could well struggle with that. The example I gave earlier about being stuck in an office all day, it's sometimes challenging for me as well. So it's really helpful for me to be able to get out of the office. Something as simple as picking up my daughter from daycare allows me to relax a little bit, take away sometimes the stresses associated with work, picking her up, and actually, spending the half an hour in the car with her, listening to whatever she has to say. I mean, she's not saying much, but the fact that you're spending some time with her does certainly calm me down, and that definitely helps. Another thing that I have found recently that has helped me in particular is, as I mentioned earlier, sport and exercise. Something that we do that helps us calm ourselves down and relax and allows us to spend time together. We just simply go for a walk around the savannah. We go for a walk around the savannah, we walk with the stroller, or sometimes we let Naya run ahead or play on her own. But it just actually allows us to relax and also to think clearer as well. Sometimes as a small business owner, you have so many ideas, your mind is running, but sometimes you're struggling to implement, and you can't do everything. That's a reality. So being able to take that time out to think about your ideas and your plans, that is certainly something that has helped us. And having a partner who understands your business certainly makes it easier to bounce these ideas off each other. So I definitely recommend some form of exercise or some form of leisure time. Something that also has helped us, now managing a business as well as having a little one, is it's important as a married couple as well to make sure you have some time for each other. So something as simple as a date night. It's something I remember when we got married, it's something I talked about, but 5 years after I realized, we didn't do that much of it. But it really forced us to sit down and think, hey, come on, let's do this for us. It's really important. We also try our best to travel as much as we can. And we actually, in our, as a couple, we try our best to manage our money and budget. So we actually have a fund for traveling. And we don't necessarily say where we're going, but it's important for us to at least decide, hey, we need to make one family trip together. We were fortunate enough last month, April, to go to Jamaica. It's the first time for both of us, all three of us, to go to Jamaica, and it was a fantastic experience. It was fantastic because we were with friends as well, friends who also have children. It was a new place, and as I mentioned, for my wife who isn't from the Caribbean, the idea of someone who isn't from the Caribbean going to Jamaica, it's really hard to explain. I mean, her eyes opened as soon as she arrived. She even said to me, hey, you tricked me. Jamaica's a lot more beautiful than Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know if I allowed her to say that, but okay. So just taking the time out to appreciate those little moments together as a family, it's really important. But we were only able to do that because we had planned ahead and we budgeted and decided, hey, we're putting aside this for 3-4 days in Jamaica. So that is certainly important. As I mentioned, as a business owner, managing your finances or managing the finances of the business is incredibly important.
It's time to close up. All right. Let's see. What do you have to tell us in 2 minutes?
Wow. Okay, in 2 minutes. So, first of all, not to leave out the emotional side of the consequences of early sexual activity. So, believe it or not, 70% of the males, teen males in one particular survey, said they wish they had waited.
Wow,
That they
men,
felt,
even
yep,
men.
that they felt. Actually, it was the guys more than the girls. And they say that they wish they had waited, and they felt emotional turmoil because they found themselves in this kind of vicious cycle now, right? That, so when they were asked, for instance, well, was sex great? Was it a good thing? Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? They were like, yes and no. So there's this conflict because physically they may have been this release, quote unquote, but there's no connection. And then there are these soul ties that are formed with, so if you keep hopping from one person to the next, it creates in teens an emotional turmoil that they can't understand and can't quite articulate. And this is from, psychologists who are working with teens who are working through some of those issues and surveys that they've done. So we can't set aside the emotional, and I found it interesting that the boys more than the girls said they wish they had waited.
Wow.
Right? The other thing for parents too is that understand that the reward part of your child's brain is developing rapidly during teens, and that's why high-risk activity is so appealing. Because it gives a greater rush. And it's appealing because you want those rewards. You want that feeling of reward. You want that dopamine rush. So what parents need to do is please find creative ways, alternative ways, because teens need to have fun. It's an emotional need. It's a valid emotional need. And so parents, I urge you to create other avenues for your teens to have fun and to feel validated and to get that excitement and have good, clean fun, whether it's dance, drama, a drama club. Start something if you have to. Volunteer in your community. Do something else. That because the reward part of the brain is developing and it has to develop and this has to happen.
And it's a real need.
It's a need, and it's because that part of the brain is there to help them move to independence. So it's there for a reason, right?
We have to wrap up. Where can we get you? How can we get you?
Right. So we're running a program in May and we're running another one in July. So you can call me on 383-2674. That's 383-2674 over on Facebook, Elpis Center, ELPIS CENTRE.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thank
for
you very
having-
much, Rebecca.
thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Well, May might be gone. I don't know how much more we could do, but definitely get in for the July session. Rebecca, Elpis Center at Facebook. Of course, we will put it on our page as well. Fill up that fill up the excitement tank. Yes. Right? So that's going to be our takeaway homework. How can we as parents fill up the excitement tank? It's a real tank that needs to be filled. Thank you guys. See you next week. It's been wonderful. Okay, bye.